Hello, I'm Kate Purdy. I'm creator and showrunner of the award-winning and critically acclaimed television series Undone on Amazon Prime. As an alum, it's an honor to be speaking with you at this Wesleyan TEDx experience. I graduated as a film major, and in film we learned production, but also auteur theory, which is the theory that the director is the major creative force in the process of making the film. And in television, that's the creator showrunner, the person who makes all the creative decisions from casting, editing, sound design, and on Undone, that person is me. I'm the auteur, technically. But in reality, I have over 200 collaborators, and each of them is brilliant in their own right, and it would be short-sighted of me to not seek their input and to weave it into the narrative of the show and the process of making it. For example, for this very video, I first wrote this kind of mockumentary sketch style piece where I played the sort of the tyrant genius auteur, and then had my collaborators come in and kind of mock me and tear me down and reveal me as a fraud, and to expose that the process is actually much more of a collaborative endeavor. I showed it to my friend and co-creator, Raphael Bob Waxberg, who had this to say.
We're putting on the shelf for a second.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. We have this. We can always go back to this, right? This is safe. This is an amber. But there's a totally different version. I would love to hear the writers talk about, because they also have experiences of like negotiating their own sense of like creative authority with the collaborative art of making television. And I think you can get to much juicier stuff that will also be fun and funny, because these are all fun, funny people.
I agree with Raphael. It would be better for you to hear from some of our fun and funny collaborators and get real world context instead of just some of my hilarious jokes.
Television writing especially is you have to at least pretend to be collaborative to survive in the medium. Like everybody, you sit around in the room for, sometimes 12 hours a day for months. You've got to get along with people. And if you ever meet screenwriters, they're often a different breed. I often like them because I like pretentious and egotistical people.
So since this is a TED Talk, I just want to start by saying everything you know about collaborative working is wrong. And I'll one-up that by saying I'm the only one that knows everything about collaborative workflow.
And no one else could ever help you figure it
Yeah.
out.
When I did 17 in Junkyard, I had way more, respect for directors. Like I put directors that I like to put them on a big pedestal, because in my mind, they were like controlling the whole thing. And now I know it's completely nonsense. I mean, they have their camera crew, they have their actors, they're just a cog in the machine in a way. Or that's too sounds too mechanical, but I mean, they're just a part of the team.
I got to edit kind of right away, and I definitely had a bit of an ego about it. It probably took me like a decade to get past that, honestly, to then like come at it from a more collaborative approach, where I recognized that I had contributions that were good, and so did other people. And if someone wanted me to edit something differently, it wasn't saying anything bad about me. It's just like my job as an editor is to help the director, the producer, the show creator to put their vision up on screen in a way that is most in line with what they're trying to say, right? And so instead of like, oh, I think it would be better to edit it this way because that's how I want to edit it, it's more like, okay, what's the show creator, the director, the producer trying to say with this piece, and how can I edit in such a way that gets that out, rather than like what my vision for it is.
That's like one of the things I didn't understand in college, is that I thought that if I was not a genius, I would never make it. and that I would be unsuccessful. So I have something to prove to myself. And I have really, really learned how like the people who think they're geniuses are really kind of bad at this job.
Right, exactly. Learning how to creatively collaborate is a skill and an important part of the job. But stepping into leadership and the collaborative process is its own complicated thing, which Raphael pointed out.
I think the truth of being a showrunner is a little more complicated than just, you have to listen to your collaborators and it takes a village, because the truth is you also have to be a leader and you have to know when to say yes and when to say no. And I would even, I'm curious about the premise a little bit of this piece for you specifically coming into this, assuming that you were going to be the auteur and learning that, oh no, I have to learn how to collaborate, because I mean, you might feel internally like that was your journey, but I feel like a just as convincing journey was coming into this as someone who was used to working on other people's shows, who was used to doing improv, used to bouncing ideas and off of other people and pivoting and immediately doing something else, but had to learn how to when to go, no, I'm the boss now, I'm in charge and we're doing it this way. I mean, that at least for me was something that I had to learn in being the boss. Like for me, the more profound lesson wasn't like, you got to learn how to listen to people, but was like knowing the difference of how to integrate what other people are saying, but also keeping that clarity of vision and being the boss. And that might be too complex a thing to try to explain in 11 minutes. But I'd be curious to hear what you think about that. And because I think the real challenge is about negotiating those instincts of both, unlearning your own auteurist aspirations while at the same time unlearning your own imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it can mean having to develop a new mindset, a new way of being, and that's not always easy. I want you to hear from my friend Joanna Callow, who recently stepped in as director for the first time after being a successful television writer for many years.
In the beginning, I literally would sometimes go like, well, I don't know, something like that. I don't know what I'm doing. But it's like, to me, I'm like trying to be like humble and also like make space for the fact that some of these crew members have been doing this job for so long, and I'm coming from the writer's side and now stepping into this position and trying to have respect. But then I was like, oh, that's probably like really annoying to them. And I think I'm being like bumbling and like, you know what I mean? And like making space for them, and that they don't want me to say that I don't know what I'm doing, because why would they have to work for someone who doesn't know what she's doing? And I think to some extent it is, yes, it's like a fear of stepping into my own.
Which I totally relate to. And one of the ways I've had to grow as a leader is in being a better communicator. What's interesting to me too about what you just said is the communication, like how much communication is happening all day, every day. Like you made the joke about you'd be in trouble if your mouth broke. Yeah. It's true. It's like, and having to think fast and having to, especially when, for me, like a lot of the writing is kind of a feeling state, poetry kind of stream.
Yeah.
And you're feeling your way into it and then trying to break that down and describe it.
Exactly. Yeah.
To other people.
Yeah. That's the weirdest thing. For me, that's the biggest discovery since I'm done that. Often it's not a vague idea or something, but I didn't specify it, and I'm always surprised by how well I can describe why I want something a certain way, and that I understand the meaning. Because usually with art you think, well, it's all kind of vague and it's not really about something. But I always notice that I sort of can explain to the crew why I want something, and I think you are the same. Like you can always sort of, most of the times you can explain why something is written that way. You know what I'm saying? But that's new for me, because if you work alone, you don't have to do that. You don't have to explain to anyone.
Yeah, I think I had to build that muscle up. I mean, at first I felt a little insulted, like, I have to, I don't know how to do this, and why don't you understand it? And it's like I'm blaming them for not getting what I'm not able to explain. and then grew into, okay, I have to communicate. And actually everyone is trying to understand it so that they can give the best performance or the best artwork forward, or, you know, the best costuming, whatever it is, or figure out the props and how they're meaningful.
But weren't you surprised too that you can, in most cases, you can just describe it and then, oh, it's really that simple, actually.
Right. And actually everyone's very smart and they just like need a little bit of information and they can run with me. Another aspect of leadership that I'm still growing into is management. Suddenly you're the boss and you need to take care of and protect your employees to make sure they have a creative and safe space to do their art. I talked with Anna Botron, who's one of our production managers in Amsterdam at Submarine, our animation studio, and she had this to say.
And also I make everything as can be not a joke, but can be a very positive, very happy event. Even though it's really like, ugh. And I'm like, my hair is start like turning white from the inside out, but I'm just smiling at everyone and say, this is okay. It's not the end of the world. We will have a solution. And so some people say, oh yeah, but we need more people. We need more people. I say, calm down. It's all right. If you really need more people, I will fight with Alvin to get more people for you. But let me do that job. You don't have to worry about that. So it's just sometimes I want to be a bad cop as well. So then I can protect the team when the artists feel comfortable and feel that they have enough support, they will produce the best they could. And that's how I want to do my job in that way. Yeah.
When people feel protected, trust is gained, and they feel safer to improvise, try things, make mistakes, find deeper solutions together. I talked with Seth Swope, who is one of our producers at Minnow Mountain, our animation studio for rotoscoping in Austin, Texas, about that.
But I want to tell you something that you said to Tommy that I think about a lot, which is trust the process. You know, he said it to us one time, like in a meeting about whatever or something, I don't know. And he was like, Kate said this really brilliant thing. And so I've just stolen it because it's totally true, but it was not a way I had thought about it before. It's tough to give up so much control. And I'm kind of constantly impressed with your ability to do that. So many people want to hang on tighter and tighter as things start becoming other people's responsibility, you know, and it doesn't help. It's, you know, trusting that process of all of the bosses doing all of their things is so important. And I feel like that just doesn't get talked about enough. You know, I just think it's so wonderful.
Right. Well, thank you. Yeah. I was talking with Noel yesterday and I mentioned that sometimes it's like the project wants to be something. You give it space, the creative process some space, instead of trying to strangle it and control every aspect of it. And actually it'll just sort of settle into where it needs to be.
Agree. Things do tend to work out. Sometimes there are even things, I'm sure you do this too, where I'm watching in the course of an episode, oh, it's not my favorite moment, or it's not my favorite joke or scene. And, you know, sometimes I've given 3 notes, I'm not going to give that 4th note right now. And it's always that thing that gets cut next. Right. Right. And it's because the collective team recognizes it.
It's almost like it's going to work out, you know?
Right. And it's hard to trust that though, especially there's so much money and jobs and, you know, reputation on the line. Like, it's just amazing that you're even in touch enough, you know, that you're so in touch to know that. And then to say it to people is, no one else has said it before you.
Right. Right. I mean, I've had my moments where I do sort of step in and be like, this needs to happen now, this way, like we need to find a solution.
Right.
But I do try to sit back and sort of see what will happen before interfering. Because so often someone else's brilliance steps in and does something that's even more interesting than what I was going to pitch. And we find a better solution.
And that's the thing, having its own personality. And then, you know, the benefit to you kind of standing back and letting people do their things is that when you do step in, they listen. You know, they don't just, oh, here's another thing that Kate wants. It's like, Kate wants this, let's make it happen.
With TV, we can get into that trust flow when the vision is clearly communicated, everyone feels comfortable to collaborate, and egos are put aside to support the show at its best. When that's happening, it becomes clear to everyone what's working and what's outside the vision of the show. I asked Patrick Metcalf, who does many different jobs on Undone, and who helped me make this video, what he felt the takeaway is from this series of interviews that we did. Here's what he said.
The idea of this show, this concept, this story that you're telling has a life outside of any one individual is, you know, very revealing. And like it is a way of understanding art in a way where it's like, okay, the author is the piece, you know, and the piece will tell you what you want it, what it wants to be. So I think especially for Undone, we found that because like there are so many people and so many collaborators that like at a certain point you just need to listen to Undone and see what it wants to be.
Yeah, that's actually what I wrote last night as a conclusion for this piece. So that's great. I'll just put that in there. No, that's awesome, because that's what I've learned too through the process of doing these interviews, was like, and then part of me was thinking, well, am I just kind of abdicating responsibility by saying, no, I just listened to the piece, and it's not me, I'm not in charge of pieces, you know?
Oh, don't listen to me. Undone told me that this was a great idea.
Right, yeah. But I do feel that way. I do feel like even with making this, like having Raphael come in and say like, throw this out and do something else that's more meaningful and more interesting, and then having these interviews and seeing what comes from it, it feels like, oh, let's listen to it. Let's listen to that. Let's try that. Let's not close ourselves off or be too stubborn or too sure that we know what's right to not try it and see what forms and what it becomes and allow it to grow and be what it wants to be. And that's the truth of running your own show. Well, it's one truth some of the time, but I hope it gave you insight into how it can be, and I hope you enjoyed it. So thank you for listening, and thank you to Wesleyan University for teaching me how to deconstruct everything around me all of the time, and also that I have a voice that can affect change to create a more egalitarian reality. If you have a chance to watch Undone, please take the 45 seconds it takes to watch the end credits. They don't make it easy, I know, but all of those people made brilliant contributions to make the show what it is. So thanks again, and have a great night.